Good afternoon. My name is John Davis. I'm Chief Executive of the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association UK, CPA UK, and I'm very pleased to have with me on this call Bob Blackman MP. Bob, thanks very much for taking part in this.
My pleasure. Good afternoon.
And what we're trying to do is get some reactions from people such as yourself, members of Parliament, about how you're finding it to do your job in these sort of strange and difficult times through the pandemic. Just wondering what you found the main challenges so far to getting your job done.
Well, obviously, when we began this lockdown was just before we were due to rise for Easter anyway. And over the Easter period, what I was intending doing is going to a lot of community meetings, a lot of, obviously we had Passover, we're on the eve of Ramadan, we've got other, and obviously we had Easter. So I was intending to go to many different religious services and community meetings over that period, none of which is possible, of course. And so that was a huge change. And in the interim, I would, of course, also have been doing a lot of street surgeries, meeting people in their homes, just chatting to people generally, none of which has been possible. So it's a huge sea change in that respect. Then, of course, the other challenge is to have your staff, who, in my case, I have an office in Westminster and an office in the constituency, and I have an office at home, so that's fine for me. But to suddenly go from a position whereby all the staff would be basically in one or two locations to suddenly all the staff being at home, operating remotely, and we took the decision when we were looking at this to have fixed desk computers in our offices and not have laptops. So one of the first things that happened was, how do we get the staff to be able to work from home in a secure environment and make sure that they were safe and okay to work, because that's fundamental, because not everyone's got broadband at home, not everyone's got the facilities to do this. So what we've had to do is obviously source laptop computers for them all. That's been a challenge because all MPs are doing the same thing, I think, and so therefore the suppliers are there, and then making sure that the connections are secure. All these things seem basic, but on the other hand, they're fundamental to the work of a member of Parliament.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Secondly, of course, what we then found was that the casework that was coming in via letter, email, or phone call doubled almost overnight. And people were raising all sorts of issues from the government. I take the view that the government have moved very swiftly and very effectively to provide help and support for people, be they the weak and vulnerable, or be they businesses, or be they employees or self-employed people. They've moved very quickly to try and provide help and support, but they can produce a generalized policy on these things. Individual people want to know, how does that affect them as an individual? So the big challenge for me and my team has been the individual complaints, all of which, or not complaints, but questions really, all of which are unique because everyone's circumstances are unique. And therefore you have to go into a lot more detail probably than you would hitherto have had to do. My main priority from the starting point was the weak and vulnerable who either had to go out to get medicines or obviously to go shopping to get food, who were unable to get a provision of home delivery because the supermarkets were overwhelmed, both with people going into them and emptying the shelves, and also booking up the online facilities. So that was a big priority. And also the other priority became the number of UK citizens in the constituency who were stranded abroad. In particular on cruise ships. There was a cruise ship, for example, that set sail from India, and the original aim was for it to go to Venice, which was the centre of the coronavirus outbreak. And most people on cruise ships, I'm afraid, are 70 plus. They are vulnerable and potentially, challenging. And we had lots and lots of contact from relatives saying, well, you've got to get these people home.
Yeah.
But to try and get them from a ship in the middle of the sea to get them home is not an easy challenge.
Yeah.
We also have people in the Caribbean, obviously in the various different West Indian countries, who were on cruises, and some of those cruises were going from the Caribbean up to Florida and other places like that, and they wanted to get home as well. And of course, the other problem then was that because of the pandemic, ports were saying, "I'm sorry, we're not allowing these ships to dock." So even if you could get flights arranged for these people, then the ships couldn't dock, and so therefore they couldn't get home. So it's a big challenge. And then the third issue has been people stuck in the Indian subcontinent. I mean, it was a major shock to me that there are 21,000 UK citizens in India alone who want to get home.
Yeah.
Same again in Pakistan, the equivalent numbers in Bangladesh and Sri Lanka. And so with India closing down, going into lockdown, then people not allowed to leave where they are to go to the airport. It represented a huge challenge to the Foreign Commonwealth Office and the people wanting to implement charter flights. So that's been a big element of our work. And then, of course, the other issue is people's individual concerns about what support they were going to get as employees or as employers. And all those questions have been horrendous, frankly, because they all involve people saying, well, I'm running out of money. What do I do? And with the government support schemes coming into operation, which is great, fantastic, what it's led to is people being worried about how they're going to pay their rents, how they're going to pay their mortgage, how they get support. As you can imagine, this has been meant that instead of doing what we would normally do as MPs, spending time in Parliament, debating issues and so on, we've been spending, certainly I can only say, I've been spending 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, dealing with these type of problems. And particularly when you've got people the other side of the world trying to get home, as you can imagine, it's just an absolute nightmare.
So
but slowly but surely, I think things are coming right.
So Bob, that's interesting. You've helpfully pointed out how you're having to deal with an increased volume of unusual and unpredictable business at a time when actually your usual mechanisms for engaging with people are harder because of the office staff having to be in different places, not necessarily with the kit they need, a real challenge. But meanwhile, today, as we're speaking, we've just today had the first session of the Commons after Easter. So as well as that constituency business, we've got the as it were, the chamber business starting again today. Any sort of early insights on views or how that's working or how that's going to work from your point of view?
Yeah, I mean, we were given strong advice by the Speaker, quite rightly, to stay away as MPs because obviously the Palace of Westminster basically, when it's normally operating, employs 15,000 people to keep in operation. So people think of the 650 MPs, but it's the support workers behind all that, of course, that are so important. So dragging all those people in at a time when we're saying to people, stay at home, would of course have sent the wrong sort of signals. So the Speaker's wants to get Parliament back and operational as quickly as possible, quite rightly too. I watched the proceedings remotely today. And of course, you could watch remotely, but you couldn't participate. So, there's several MPs that went into Westminster. And I think one of the concerns that people will have is, well, why were they there? And others advise not to go. Now, I can absolutely understand, for example, the minister responsible should be there. The whip responsible, and obviously the opposition, and equally people who have a position, i.e., for example, Karen Bradley as chairman of the procedure committee, quite rightly she was there because the procedure committee have got to recommend what we do in these environments. But others were there, and you think, well, hang on a minute, why are they there? And we've been all strongly advised to stay away. So I think one of the challenges in this, I think, is going to be if we're saying that MPs, yes, they're due to participate, then that's going to be quite a challenge, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because we're elected to question and put ministers under scrutiny. Quite right, that's our job. But if we're doing it remotely, it's a very different sort of environment to being in the chamber of the House of Commons. I know select committees.
Yeah.
The select committees I sit on have been a bit reticent about doing this remotely. We haven't done any. I sit on the Housing Committee's Local Government Select Committee, for example. We haven't done any. We've had remote meetings, virtual meetings, but we haven't done any evidence sessions yet. And I think we're due to do one on Monday, so we'll see how that goes.
Yeah.
But I suspect that it's quite a challenge to start with, and then when you get into it, no doubt we'll be able to do it. But it's a very different sort of environment to do these sort of things in. I think the concern I have, as I say, is, well, who goes and why is the key. The technology apparently is going to allow up to 120 MPs to participate at any one time, or in any one session, which does beg the question of what about the other 400 or 530? What's happening to them, and what are they enabled to do to ask the questions that they want to ask of ministers?
Yeah.
I think it's good, like everything else. Hopefully, this is not going to last too long, but the longer it lasts, I think the more challenges there become on how we operate.
Bob, that's really useful. I'm hoping that what we might do is check back in with you maybe in a week or so's time when you've had a chance to experience some more of that when your committee has met, perhaps, because it'd be interesting to see, as you say, how these things evolve. I think there's a lot of interest around the UK, but also around the rest of the Commonwealth in how other parliaments are, how they are responding to this. So if we might come back and ask some follow-up at some point to see how it's going.
Well, one of the other thing that we have done in my office, which is, I don't know what other people have done, is I'm sending out, I've got about 11,000 constituents' email addresses, and we're sending out on a daily basis a communication which is purely factual, just information about employment, social services, etc., other helplines and other forms of communication, just so that people have got that to hand, which has gone down really well. And we've also put out a leaflet on a non-partisan basis of guidance throughout the constituency with helpful guides on where to go and so on, which has been very well received, I think. And I think it's something that other colleagues should consider. And if you're looking, of course, in other parts of the Commonwealth where they're having to do things remotely, it'd be interesting to share experiences of how they're communicating with the people they represent, their constituents, in these difficult times, because you can't go out and about and do the things you would normally do. Absolutely.
Well, Bob, as you know, that's what the CPA is all about. Is about trying to be connected with the other parliaments and learn from each other. So that's something certainly which one of the reasons why we wanted to capture these initial thoughts, and we'll be trying to share them and also to pick up from other parliaments how they're responding to this. But for the moment, thanks for your time this afternoon, and all best with this with that important work in these strange and interesting times. And stay well. Thanks.
Indeed. Thank you. Stay safe.